The crowd was screaming so loud that the ground itself seemed to shake. Yet the small alien boy in the center of the arena heard nothing. He just stood there, confused, holding a broken toy in his hands, his wide eyes searching for something he could not understand. A human soldier stood 20 steps away from him, his hands trembling around a cold metal weapon, sweat running down his face, his breath heavy, his heart pounding like a drum. "Shoot!" The commander's voice echoed through the arena speakers, sharp and merciless. The human did not move. His finger rested near the trigger, but he did not press it. His eyes locked onto the child. The boy tilted his head slightly and gave a small smile, as if he thought this was some kind of strange game. The crowd roared louder, demanding action, demanding blood. "Shoot, or they die," the commander shouted again, and this time a massive screen lit up behind the soldier. On it, dozens of prisoners were shown, chained and kneeling, their heads lowered, their lives hanging by a thread. The human's breath caught in his throat, his grip tightened. He looked back at the boy, then at the screen, then back again. A single tear rolled down his cheek. The boy still smiled, unaware of the storm around him. The soldier slowly raised the weapon, his arms heavy like they were made of stone. The crowd fell into a sudden silence, waiting, watching, hungry. His finger moved, just a little. Then, bang! The first shot echoed across the arena, loud and violent, but the boy was still standing. The bullet had missed him completely, hitting the ground just inches away, sending dust into the air. The crowd froze for a second, confused. Then angry voices exploded everywhere. "He missed! Do it again!" The commander's face darkened, his voice colder than before. "That was not a mistake you can afford," he said slowly. The human lowered the weapon slightly, his chest rising and falling fast. The boy looked down at the ground where the dust still floated, then back up at the human, and for a moment he laughed silently, as if he found it funny. That small laugh hit the human harder than any weapon. He swallowed hard, his eyes shaking. "Second shot," the commander ordered. The screen behind him zoomed in on the prisoners. One of them lifted his head, his eyes full of fear. The human's hands tightened again. He raised the weapon once more. The boy did not move. He just stood there, calm, trusting. For a second, the human's vision blurred. Something inside him was breaking. He adjusted his aim, slightly to the side, almost invisible to anyone watching. The crowd leaned forward. Another breath, another moment. Then, bang! The second shot fired. Again, the bullet missed, even closer this time, brushing past the boy's arm without touching him. A loud gasp spread through the arena. Now the crowd was no longer just angry. They were confused. "What is he doing?" someone shouted. The commander's eyes narrowed, suspicion growing. The human lowered the weapon again, his hands shaking even more now. The boy looked at his arm, then back at the human, and slowly raised his small hand, waving at him with a gentle smile. It was a simple gesture, innocent and pure, and it made everything harder. The human's jaw tightened, his breathing uneven. He knew he could not keep missing forever. He knew the next shots would get closer, and closer, and closer, until there would be no space left to miss. Third shot. The commander's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The screen behind the soldier showed one of the prisoners being pulled to their feet. Time was running out. The human raised the weapon again, slower this time, more controlled. His eyes locked onto the boy, but something had changed. He was no longer just aiming. He was thinking, calculating, planning something no one else could see. The crowd went silent again, sensing something different, something dangerous. The boy still smiled, but now there was a small flicker of confusion in his eyes. The human took a deep breath, his finger tightened on the trigger, and this time, he did not look away, because whatever happened next would change everything. The third shot had not been fired yet, but the entire arena already felt different, like something unseen was slowly tightening around everyone inside. The human soldier stood still, his weapon raised, his eyes locked on the small alien boy. The boy no longer laughed. His smile had faded just a little, replaced by a quiet confusion. He still could not hear the screams, but he could feel the tension now, like a shadow creeping closer. "Why are you waiting?" The commander's voice thundered across the arena. The human did not answer. Instead, his eyes moved for a split second, scanning the walls, the lights, the metal towers surrounding the arena. He was not just looking at the boy anymore. He was studying everything. The crowd noticed the pause, and their anger started rising again. "Shoot!" they chanted louder and louder. The screen behind him suddenly changed. One of the prisoners was dragged forward, forced onto their knees, a weapon pointed at their head. The message was clear: no more delays. The human's jaw tightened, his fingers trembling around the trigger. He looked at the boy again. The boy stared back, silent, still, his small hands hanging by his sides. For a moment their eyes met, and something passed between them. Something simple, something human. The soldier took a slow breath. Then, bang! The third shot exploded through the arena. The bullet cut through the air and struck the ground right beside the boy's foot, sending dust and small stones flying. Closer than before. Much closer. The boy flinched this time, stepping back slightly, his eyes widening. He still could not hear the sound, but now he understood one thing. This was not a game. A wave of shock rolled through the crowd. Some cheered, thinking the human was finally obeying. Others leaned forward, sensing something strange in the pattern. The commander narrowed his eyes, watching carefully. The human lowered the weapon slowly, his chest rising and falling. His hands were shaking more than ever, but his eyes were becoming steady. That was the dangerous part. "Again!" the commander ordered instantly, not giving him time to think. The screen behind him showed another prisoner being forced forward, their face pale with fear. The pressure was building faster now. The human raised the weapon again, but this time his movement was different. Less hesitation, more control. The boy stood frozen, his body tense, his breathing uneven. He looked at the human, searching his face for answers. The human slightly moved his free hand, a small, almost invisible gesture, a slow motion downward. Stay still. The boy did not fully understand, but something about the human's eyes made him listen. He stopped moving completely. The crowd went quieter, watching closely. Something about this moment felt heavier than the others. The soldier adjusted his aim, just a few inches. Then, bang! The fourth shot fired. This time the bullet passed so close to the boy's shoulder that it tore a small piece of fabric from his clothing. The boy gasped silently, stumbling back, his heart racing. Now fear had reached him. Real fear. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half confused. "Yes, finish it," some shouted. "Why is he playing with him?" Others yelled. The commander leaned forward, his expression dark and focused. He was starting to see it. A pattern. The human lowered the weapon again, his breathing slower now, more controlled. He was no longer reacting. He was planning. The boy looked down at his torn clothing, then back at the human, his eyes no longer smiling. There was a question in them now. Why? The human's face tightened, but he gave the smallest nod, almost impossible to notice. "Trust me." "Fifth shot," the commander said, his voice lower now, more dangerous than before. The screen behind the human showed two prisoners this time, both forced to kneel. The stakes had doubled. Time was slipping away. The human raised the weapon once more, his grip firm, his arms steady. The crowd held its breath. Even the air felt still. The boy stood frozen, his body tense, but he did not run. He did not move. Something inside him had decided to stay. The soldier adjusted his aim again, slightly higher this time. His eyes flickered for a moment toward the metal tower on the right side of the arena, then back to the boy. Then, bang! The fifth shot rang out. The bullet flew past the boy's head, so close that it brushed through his hair, and then it struck the metal tower behind him. A small spark flashed for just a second, barely noticeable, but it was there. The crowd did not see it. The commander almost did. And the human. He definitely did, because for the first time since this began, a very faint, almost invisible smile touched the corner of his lips, and that was the moment everything truly started to change. The spark from the last shot had vanished almost instantly, but the human soldier did not forget it. He had seen exactly where the bullet landed, exactly how the metal reacted, exactly how the energy flickered for just a second. That was not normal. That was not just a wall. The arena was hiding something. The soldier lowered his weapon slowly, but inside his mind, everything was moving faster than ever. The crowd was still shouting, still demanding the end, but their voices no longer mattered to him. He had found a possibility, and that changed everything. The small alien boy stood frozen, his chest rising quickly, his eyes wide with fear now. The earlier innocence was gone, replaced by something fragile and uncertain. He looked at the human, searching for meaning, searching for safety. The human met his gaze, steady, calm, and gave the smallest nod again. Stay. The boy did not understand the plan, but he understood one thing. Running would make it worse. "You are running out of time," the commander's voice echoed, colder than before. The massive screen behind the human flickered again. Now, 3 prisoners were being dragged forward, forced onto their knees, their hands bound, their heads lowered. The stakes had risen again. The message was clear. No more games. The human's grip tightened around the weapon, but his face had changed. The fear was still there, but now it was controlled, shaped into something sharper, something dangerous. He slowly raised the weapon again. The crowd leaned forward, sensing that something big was about to happen. The boy stood still, his legs shaking slightly, but he did not move. He kept looking at the human, trusting him in a way he could not explain. The soldier adjusted his aim, not just at the boy, but past him, beyond him, measuring distance, angle, reflection. His eyes flickered toward the same metal tower for a split second. Then back. Then, bang! The 6th shot exploded through the arena. The bullet flew straight toward the boy, closer than ever before. Too close. It grazed his upper arm, slicing through his skin just enough to draw a thin line of blood. The boy jerked back, his face twisting in silent pain. He did not scream. He could not hear his own voice, but the pain was real now. Very real. A red line slowly formed on his arm, and for a moment, everything froze. Then the crowd erupted, louder than ever. Some cheered wildly, believing the human had finally begun to obey. Others shouted in confusion, still unsure of what they were seeing. The commander watched closely, his eyes sharp, calculating. That shot had been too precise, too controlled. The human lowered the weapon again, his breathing steady, his eyes locked on the boy. For a second, something painful flashed across his face, guilt, but it disappeared just as quickly, replaced by focus. The boy held his injured arm, his body trembling, his trust now shaken. He looked at the human again, but this time there was fear in his eyes. Real fear. The human slowly shook his head, just a little. Not yet. The boy hesitated, his instincts telling him to run, to escape. But something deeper held him in place. Something in the human's eyes. The commander stepped forward slightly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Enough," he said, calm but deadly. The arena fell silent almost instantly. "You are not missing," he continued slowly. "You are choosing." A ripple of tension spread through the crowd. The human said nothing. He simply raised the weapon again. But now, everything was different. Every movement was precise, calculated, intentional. The boy stood frozen, his injured arm shaking, his breathing uneven. The human's eyes flickered again toward the metal structures around the arena. He had seen it now more than once. The small sparks, the hidden reactions. There was a system beneath all this, a system that could break. "Seventh shot," the commander ordered, his voice low, watching carefully. The screen behind the human showed even more prisoners now. The number had grown. Time was almost gone. The human adjusted his stance slightly, changing his angle just a few degrees, barely noticeable, but critical. The crowd held its breath. The boy stood still, his fear rising, his trust fading. But he did not run. Not yet. The soldier took a slow breath, his finger tightening on the trigger. His eyes locked onto a point just beyond the boy, a point no one else was watching. Then, bang! The seventh shot fired. The bullet flew past the boy's side, missing him completely. But this time, it did not just hit the wall. It struck a specific section of the metal structure, and for a split second, a brighter spark flashed, longer than before, stronger than before, almost like something inside the arena reacted. The crowd barely noticed it, but the commander did. His eyes widened just slightly, and in that tiny reaction, the human saw confirmation. He had found it, the weakness. The boy looked back at the human, his fear mixed with confusion. He did not understand what was happening, but he could feel it. Something was changing. The human lowered the weapon one last time, his face calm, his breathing steady. Only one bullet left, only one chance. And whatever he was about to do next would decide not just the boy's fate, but everyone's. Only one bullet remained, and everyone in the arena could feel it. The air had grown heavy, like a storm waiting to break. The human soldier stood still, his weapon lowered for a moment, his mind racing through every detail he had seen, every spark, every angle, every reaction from the hidden system beneath the arena floor. He was close now, dangerously close. But being close was not enough. One mistake would end everything. The small alien boy stood a few steps away, clutching his injured arm, his breathing uneven, his eyes locked on the human. The trust that once filled those eyes was now fragile, almost gone, but it was not completely lost. Not yet. The commander stepped forward, his voice calm but filled with quiet danger. "You have one shot left," he said slowly. "This time, you do not miss." The crowd went silent. No chanting, no shouting. Just thousands of eyes watching, waiting. The massive screen behind the human flickered again. Now even more prisoners were shown, rows of them, their lives hanging by a single decision. The message was clear. This was the end of the game. The human lifted his weapon again, but he did not aim immediately. Instead, his eyes moved across the arena one last time. The metal towers, the glowing lines in the walls, the faint hum of energy beneath the ground. Everything connected, everything part of the same system. He had already tested it with 7 shots, each one closer, each one revealing something new, and now. He understood. The boy shifted slightly, his legs weak, his body tense. He looked at the human, searching for something to hold on to, a reason not to run. The human met his gaze, steady and firm. And then, he gave a clear signal this time, a small movement of his hand, pointing slightly to the left. Not obvious, but enough. The boy hesitated, confused. Then slowly, carefully, he moved one small step to the side. The crowd did not notice, but the commander did. His eyes narrowed instantly. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low. The human did not respond. He simply adjusted his aim. Just a fraction. Everything had to be perfect. Distance, angle, timing. The boy stood still again, exactly where the human needed him to be. Fear still filled his eyes, but something else was there too, a small, quiet trust. The human's finger rested on the trigger, but he did not fire. Not yet. Something was still wrong. Something was missing. The commander's patience finally snapped. "Fire now!" he shouted. The screen behind the human changed again. This time, a prisoner was pulled forward and a weapon was pressed against their head. The countdown had begun. 5, the crowd leaned forward. 4, the boy's breathing quickened. 3, the human's grip tightened. 2, his eyes flickered one last time across the arena. And then he saw it. A faint glow, barely visible, running through a line in the metal structure behind the boy. A power line, connected to everything. That was it. That was the core. 1. The human raised the weapon fully, his arms steady, his mind completely clear now. The boy stood frozen, his heart racing. For a moment, everything slowed down. The noise, the fear, the pressure, all of it faded. There was only the target, only the plan, only the final shot. Then, bang! The 8th shot exploded through the arena, louder than all the others. The bullet flew forward, straight toward the boy. Closer than ever before, closer than it had any right to be. The boy's eyes widened in pure fear. For a split second, it looked like the bullet would hit him, like this was truly the end. But at the last possible moment, the bullet shifted slightly. Deflecting just enough, it passed the boy's shoulder by a breath and slammed directly into the glowing line behind him for a single heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then, the entire arena shook. A deep, violent rumble exploded from beneath the ground. Lights flickered wildly. The glowing lines across the walls surged with unstable energy. The metal towers sparked and cracked, and then a massive explosion tore through the system. The hidden shield collapsed instantly. The invisible barrier that controlled the arena shattered like glass. The crowd screamed, no longer in excitement but in fear. The commander staggered back, his face filled with shock. "No, that's not possible," he whispered. The human lowered the weapon slowly, his breathing steady, his eyes calm. He had not aimed at the boy, not once. Every shot, every single shot, had been leading to this moment. The boy stood frozen, untouched, his eyes wide as he looked around at the chaos. He did not fully understand what had happened, but he knew one thing. The human had not tried to kill him. He had been protecting him all along, and now the real fight was about to begin. The explosion did not end the arena. It woke it up. For a brief moment, everything froze, like the entire structure was deciding whether to survive or collapse. Then the lights above flickered violently, bursting one by one, sparks raining down like fire. The invisible shield that once controlled every movement in the arena was gone, completely gone, and for the first time, the prisoners were no longer trapped. A low alarm began to echo through the walls, not loud but deep, like a warning meant for something far more powerful than the crowd. The human soldier did not move at first, his eyes scanning everything, measuring the damage. He knew this was only the beginning. The small alien boy stood frozen, his injured arm still shaking, his wide eyes moving across the chaos. He could not hear the alarms, but he could feel the vibrations in the ground. Something big had changed, something dangerous. The human took a slow step forward, lowering his weapon slightly. The boy flinched at the movement, fear still fresh in his mind. For a second, it looked like he might run, but he didn't. Instead, he stood there, uncertain, waiting. The human stopped a few steps away, careful, calm. He placed the weapon on the ground, slowly, making sure the boy could see every movement. Then he raised both hands, open, empty, no threat. The boy stared at him, confused, his breathing uneven. The human pointed gently at the boy's arm, then at himself. Help? The boy hesitated, his body tense, but then he took a small step forward. Trust was still there, weak but alive. Behind them, chaos exploded. The prisoners on the massive screen were no longer kneeling. Without the system controlling them, the guards hesitated, unsure, and that hesitation was enough. One prisoner broke free, then another. Within seconds, the controlled line turned into a struggle. The crowd above panicked, some trying to escape, others frozen in place. The commander shouted orders, his voice sharp and furious. "Lock the exits!" But nothing responded. The system was down, completely down. The human quickly tore a piece of fabric from his sleeve and carefully wrapped it around the boy's injured arm. His hands were steady, precise, gentle. The boy watched him closely, his fear slowly fading, replaced by something else. Understanding. For the first time, the boy realized, this human was never his enemy. A loud crash echoed from the far side of the arena as one of the metal towers collapsed, sending debris across the ground. The human's head snapped up instantly, his focus returning. Danger was everywhere now. This place was no longer controlled. It was falling apart. He picked up his weapon again, but this time he did not point it at the boy. He held it ready, scanning for threats. The boy stepped closer to him, instinctively, as if he knew staying near the human was safer. That small movement changed everything. They were no longer separated. Now they were together. Across the arena, armed guards finally reacted, raising their weapons, trying to regain control. But without the system guiding them, without the shield protecting them, they were vulnerable. A sudden blast from somewhere in the chaos knocked one of the guards down, then another. The prisoners were fighting back. The human grabbed the boy's shoulder gently and guided him behind a piece of fallen metal. "Stay low." The boy followed without hesitation this time, his trust growing stronger with every second. The human peeked over the edge, analyzing the battlefield. This was no longer a test. This was war, and he had just started it. A group of guards began moving toward them, their weapons raised, their movements aggressive. They had seen what the human had done, and they wanted him dead. The human's grip tightened on his weapon, his body shifting into position. He was ready now, fully ready, but before he could fire, the ground beneath them shook again, harder this time. A deep crack spread across the arena floor, glowing faintly with unstable energy. The human's eyes widened slightly. This was not just damage. This was something bigger. Something hidden beneath the arena was waking up. The boy looked at the crack, then back at the human, fear returning to his eyes. The human shook his head slightly. Not fear, focus. He quickly looked around, searching for an escape route. But the arena was collapsing faster now. Time was running out. Then, suddenly, from the glowing crack in the ground, a pulse of energy surged upward. Not random, not chaotic, but controlled, directed, like a signal. The human froze for just a second, realizing something important. This was not just a power system. This was something else, something alive. The boy felt it too. His body went still, his eyes wide as if he recognized it, as if it recognized him. The human slowly turned to look at the boy, and in that moment, he understood. The child was not just a victim, not just a random target. He was connected to whatever was waking up beneath them, and saving him. Had just triggered something far bigger than escape, something that could change the entire galaxy. The pulse from beneath the arena did not fade. It grew stronger, like something deep underground had finally noticed that its cage was broken. The ground continued to tremble in slow waves, each one heavier than the last, sending cracks across the metal floor. The human soldier stood still for a moment, his eyes locked on the glowing fissure beneath them. This was no accident anymore. This was response. The small alien boy stood close behind him, his breathing uneven, his injured arm still wrapped, his eyes wide and unblinking. He was not just scared now. He was sensing it. Something familiar. Something deep inside him reacting to the same pulse. The human slowly lowered his stance, scanning the surroundings. Guards were still moving through the chaos, but their formation was broken, disorganized, panicked. The system that once controlled everything was gone, and now they were exposed. Completely exposed. A sudden crack of energy burst from the ground again, stronger this time, sending a shockwave through the arena. The human grabbed the boy instinctively, pulling him behind a collapsed metal barrier. "Stay down." The boy obeyed immediately. No hesitation now. Trust had become instinct. Above them, the ceiling lights flickered violently, some exploding completely. Darkness and light kept replacing each other, making everything unstable, unpredictable. The commander's voice echoed through the broken speakers, but it was no longer calm. It was angry, fractured. "Contain the core," he shouted, but no one seemed to know where the core even was anymore. The human peeked out from behind the barrier, watching the guards struggle. Something had changed in their movements. They were not just fighting, they were fleeing. Something beneath the arena had started affecting them too. The boy suddenly grabbed the human's sleeve, his body tense. For the first time, he spoke. Not words, but a sharp sound, like a reaction, like recognition. The human turned quickly to him. "What is it?" he whispered. The boy pointed toward the glowing crack in the ground, his fingers shaking. His expression was not just fear. It was memory. The human narrowed his eyes, trying to understand. Then the ground exploded again. A vertical surge of energy shot upward from the crack, lighting the entire arena in a blue-white flash. And for a split second, everything stopped. The guards froze mid-movement. The crowd above went silent. Even the alarms cut out. Complete silence. In that silence, the boy's eyes widened suddenly, and something clicked inside the human's mind. This was not just a power source. This was a signal interface, and the boy was part of it. The human slowly turned his head toward the child, studying him more carefully now, not as a victim, but as a key. The boy looked back, confused, sensing the shift. The human gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, steadying him. "Stay with me," he said quietly. The boy did not understand all the words, but he understood the meaning. He nodded slightly. Suddenly, a loud mechanical roar erupted from deep beneath the arena. Not random, structured, like something enormous was activating layer by layer. The ground beneath them began to split wider, the glowing lines forming a network pattern across the floor. The human realized the truth in an instant. The entire arena was built on top of something alive, something vast, and it had just been awakened. A section of the arena floor collapsed nearby, revealing a deep shaft filled with rotating energy cores. Massive, ancient, unstable. The boy gasped silently, his body shaking. But he did not run. He stayed close to the human. The commander's voice returned again, but now it sounded distant, almost desperate. "Stop the reactor before full awakening." But there was no system left to stop anything. Only chaos. The human looked at the energy shaft, then at the boy, then back again. Everything was connected now. The shots, the sparks, the system failure, the signal pulse. It had all been leading here. The final piece. A group of guards suddenly appeared from the smoke, raising their weapons directly at them. This time, there was no hesitation in their intent. The human immediately shifted his stance, placing himself between the boy and the threat. Protective, automatic. The boy stepped slightly behind him, mirroring his movement without thinking. The first shot from the guards fired, hitting the metal barrier and sending sparks flying. The human responded instantly, firing back with precision, disabling one guard in a single shot. No hesitation, no waste. The arena was collapsing faster now, energy surging in unpredictable waves. The ground beneath the guards cracked open suddenly, pulling two of them down into the glowing depths. Their screams were cut off instantly by the roar of energy below. The human grabbed the boy again, pulling him closer. "We move now," he said firmly. The boy nodded immediately. Together, they ran through the collapsing arena, moving toward what looked like a broken exit tunnel. But as they reached it, the energy pulse surged one more time, stronger than ever, and from the depths below, something massive began to rise. Not a machine, not a weapon. Something older, and it was responding directly to the boy, as if it had finally found what it was waiting for, all along. The tunnel ahead was broken, half collapsed, and glowing cracks of energy ran through its walls like veins. The human soldier slowed for a second, scanning the unstable path, then immediately pulled the boy closer. "Stay right behind me." The boy nodded without hesitation, his small steps matching the human's pace, even as the ground trembled beneath them. Behind them, the arena was no longer an arena. It was collapsing into itself, layer by layer, as if something inside it had finally broken free after a long sleep. A deep, mechanical roar echoed from below, but now it was different. It was no longer random. It was focused. The boy suddenly stopped for a fraction of a second, his head tilting slightly. He felt it again. That same pulse, but stronger now. Closer, the human noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked sharply. The boy didn't answer with words. He simply pointed forward, toward the end of the tunnel. And then the human saw it. A massive chamber opening ahead, glowing with blue-white energy. Rotating structures suspended in the air like broken pieces of a forgotten machine. But at the center of it all was a core, alive, pulsing, responding. The human slowed down, instinct kicking in. This was not just technology. This was control, something far beyond anything they had seen so far. The boy stepped closer to the opening, almost as if he was being pulled. The human grabbed his arm instantly. "No," he said firmly, but the boy shook his head slightly, not in refusal, but in recognition. Something inside him was calling back. A loud, cracking sound echoed behind them as more of the tunnel collapsed, sealing their only way back. They were trapped now. No exit, only forward. The human tightened his grip on the weapon, scanning every corner of the chamber. Then suddenly, the core pulsed harder, and the entire structure lit up. A wave of energy spread outward, and the boy gasped, holding his head. The human immediately knelt beside him. "Stay with me," he said quickly. The boy's eyes were open, but something had changed in them. They were no longer just scared. They were connected. A voice, faint and deep, echoed through the chamber, not spoken, but felt. "Return." Signal confirmed. The human froze. This was not language. This was recognition. The boy slowly lifted his head, looking directly at the core, and for the first time he spoke clearly. Not broken sounds, not confusion. A single word. Home. The human's eyes widened slightly. Before he could respond, the ground beneath them lit up with a massive pattern, forming a circular network, locking them inside the chamber. The core began to rise, slowly, revealing its full structure, massive, ancient, and alive. The commander's broken voice suddenly returned through a damaged speaker system. "Do not let it fully awaken," he shouted. But it was too late. The human looked around, realizing there were no guards left here, no control systems, nothing to stop what was happening. Only them and it. The boy took a step forward again. This time the human did not stop him immediately, because he could see it now. The boy was not being pulled like a victim. He was being recognized like a key. A missing part finally returned. The core responded instantly to the boy's movement, lighting up brighter, faster, stronger, and suddenly images flashed through the air around them. Not holograms created by machines, but memories. Old ones, vast ones, showing ships, civilizations, and destruction across galaxies. The human watched in silence, his grip loosening slightly. This was not a weapon facility. It was a memory archive, a living system storing something ancient. The boy reached out his hand slowly toward the light. The human hesitated, then stepped closer behind him, ready for anything, the moment the boy's fingers touched the glowing energy field. Everything stopped. Complete silence. Then the core reacted violently, sending a wave of light through the entire structure. The human shielded the boy instinctively, but nothing harmful came. Instead, something else happened. The entire system stabilized, like a broken machine finally recognizing its missing piece. The boy stood still, eyes glowing faintly now, connected directly to the core, and then the truth revealed itself, not in words, but in understanding. The boy was not just an alien child. He was a living interface, designed to control or awaken this system, a key created for something much larger than war. The human slowly lowered his weapon completely, realizing there was nothing left to fight. The commander's voice came one last time, but it was weak now, almost afraid. "You don't understand what you've activated." The human looked at the boy, then at the core, and for the first time, he understood everything. This was never a rescue mission. It was a reactivation. And now, with the final connection complete, the system was no longer waking up. It was choosing its next phase, and the galaxy outside the collapsing arena was about to change forever.